Are you looking to move in Toronto and want to know the pros and cons of the city? Then this video is for you. After watching this video, you're going to learn about different pros and cons that you may have not seen in other videos surrounding YouTube. And it's all going to begin right after this. Hey everyone, I'm Josh Tavares, Realtor with eXp Realty covering the Greater Toronto Area. It would mean so much to us if you can help us out and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to get updates on our newly uploaded content. And if you want access to our seller's guide, comment seller's guide down below and we'll send that your way. Without further ado, let's begin. Let's start this video off with some pros and start it off with the arts and culture scene of Toronto. Toronto is a wonderful city for artists and for those who love being involved in the arts. The city has a plethora of art galleries and culture cities all throughout the city of Toronto. When it comes to culture, there are many museums and festivals for you to check out. The Art Gallery of Ontario, or the AGO, is located in Toronto and is the largest gallery in the province of Ontario. The city of Toronto owns and operates 10 different museums with different artifacts and different bits of culture all throughout the city. Number 2, several higher educational institutions. Toronto and the GTA is home to some of the best higher end institutions throughout the world. The institutions include University of Toronto, Ryerson University, York University, George Brown College, Humber College, Seneca College, and more. Not only is the University of Toronto the most recognizable, but also the most famous university or educational institution in all of Canada. Students of all kinds commute many different times to get to their location, and many of the institutions do have on-site residents that you can actually live in if need be. We have students that not only either live on site, but students who actually take the GO Transit, which could take them 30 to 40 minutes to get to their institution every day. There are few cities in all of the world that have as much to offer educationally wise than Toronto. People from all over the world move to Toronto on purpose so they can get their hands on Toronto educations from, like I said, University of Toronto, Humber, George Brown, and more. And which is why there are so many different investors investing in housing in the Toronto area as well as Greater Toronto Area to get a return on their money from so many students coming into Toronto for schooling. Number 3, Plentiful Parks. Toronto has many different green space and parks all throughout the city, great for time with family, friends, picnics, and whatnots. Definitely some of the older areas like the Trinity Bellwoods, the North Riverdale area are better in terms of the amount of green space, but all in all, the city has really good amounts of green space. High Park is recognized as the most beautiful park in all of Toronto with tons of green space, playgrounds, spaces with animals, and so much more for anyone of all different age groups to love. If you like venturing over the water, then the Toronto Islands has also some lovely green space for you to enjoy. To get to the island, you can actually get to the ferry on Bay and Harbourfront, in which you can get onto the ferry and go straight to the island. Number 4, great for startups. Toronto is a hot destination for business startups. If you're an entrepreneur looking to build a startup or an employee looking to work for a startup, trust me, you're gonna love Toronto. Also, Toronto's been known as one of the top 5 tech cities in all of the world, even combating places in the US, such as Washington and San Francisco for such a strong, robust tech area. Toronto has an excellent cultural presence for entrepreneurs. That's it for the pros. Let's get to the cons now. Number 1 being congestion and traffic. Being that Toronto is a massive city, essentially the Manhattan of all of Canada, it's going to take you a while to get to close by locations, where in places like Alberta, it may take you 5 minutes by drive, where in Toronto, it may take you 30 to 40 minutes. To get to Scarborough could take you about 25 minutes to potentially up to an hour depending on traffic and congestion, where in the past it would have taken you maybe a fraction of the time, maybe as high as 30 minutes. So there is a lot of congestion and traffic all throughout Toronto. Now, there are many highways that you can use to go all throughout the different areas of Toronto and the Greater Toronto Area, but there tends to be a lot of congestion, especially on the 401s, Gardiner Expressways, the QEWs. Something to be mindful of that if you're going to travel outside of Toronto, you might want to have your Google Maps handy. If you need to get somewhere by a certain time, you might want to leave a little earlier to get there at the time, especially if it's the summer where there is tons of road construction. Number 2, hardly any downtown parking. From the 1960s to 1990s, there were tons and tons of parking all throughout Toronto, even in the downtown core, places like the CN Tower, the Rogers Centre, and all throughout the downtown core. However, as time has gone by, Toronto has become massively congested, where there are tons of towers that used to at one time be a parking lot, where it's very, very challenging now to find parking in Toronto. Parking is pretty scarce in Toronto. There's some streets that are bare. However, you're only allowed to have up to about 4 cars parking on the road. There is underground parking that can go from anywhere from $10 to $45 depending on where you're going. Now, if you're going to go into an entertainment district where you've got, a Raptors game at Scotiabank Arena, you've got a Blue Jays game at the Rogers Centre, you could easily pay $40 to maybe $50 for parking. Not only is housing expensive, but so are the expenses of food, gas, and so much more. Homes in Toronto are super expensive. Detached homes are about 1.5 in Toronto. Detached are just above $1 million. Townhomes are about $1 million as well, and condos being about $600,000 to $700,000. Now, if you're looking to rent even a 1+1 condominium in downtown Toronto, you're probably looking about $2,200 to about $2,500, depending on the finish. And even renting out a home in the GTA can probably cost you about $2,500 to above $4,000 depending where you're going and the characteristics. So it can be very expensive at times to not only find housing, but also groceries and other goods. As for any massive city, the closer you are to downtown, the more expensive any goods are going to cost. Typically in the core and downtown core, you're going to find a lot of higher end grocery stores such as Sobeys and Loblaws that are going to be a lot more, as well as Shoppers Drug Mart. That's going to cost a lot more money and less of the Freshcos and the No Frills that tend to be a little bit less in price. But realistically, they're all not that far from one another. But I will say that Loblaws and Sobeys typically are on the higher end in terms of pricing. Also, like I stated earlier, gas is getting very expensive, especially in Toronto, where in the suburbs of Toronto, you're looking at about $1.50 a liter for gas at this point of recording. Keeping your expenses under track is going to be super important when living in Toronto, no matter the amount of income that you're generating, because you can generate a high income, but if you have a lot of expenses, you're not any better than anyone else who has a lower expenses and low income. Last but not least, figuring out how to get around the city. Now, being in Toronto, there are many different ways to transit around the city. You can use a vehicle, bike, public transit. We have good public transit system in the city. However, because of how dense the city's become and highly populated, it becomes a bit challenging at times to get to where you need to go on time. The city is pretty large, where if you're coming all the way from Union Station to go all the way to North York, it's probably going to take you about 30-40 minutes just from the subway perspective, not including any buses or any other methods of transportation from there to your next destination. It will take some time to be comfortable with the city and being able to commute around it. However, there are many different resources online that you can Google to get as much information you can to make it as easy as possible, such as Google Maps, as I stated earlier in this video. And with Toronto's public transit system, you have access to streetcars, buses, subways, even LRTs. So those are some of the resources that you can use to get around the city if you do not have a vehicle. There you have it, the pros and cons of living in Toronto. I hope this doesn't sway you from not coming to Toronto, but being realistic in terms of what the city has to offer and its cons and pros. I hope this video is super helpful, insightful, and gives you all the information needed of the pros and cons of living in Toronto. I'm Josh Tavares, Realtor at eXp Realty, covering the Greater Toronto Area. Once again, it would mean so much this if you can help us out. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell to get updates on our newly uploaded content. And if you want to know about the cost of living in Toronto, click the card above. I give you detailed numbers of the cost of living in Toronto. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Take care.